Welcome, everybody. Tonight, we're going to be working on Unit 13, and Unit 13 is where we go into the first of our three AI projects for this class. The first one is focused on doing an AI project for statistical data. So you can see the agenda here and how we're going to apply basically no code tools to this. And they also look at this as kind of like a general form of like how to solve basic problems for statistical analysis using no code. And then we're going to focus on the orange data mining tool, which is a tool that's built into the Anaconda distribution of Python. So that's one of the reasons why we wanted you to install that. And we'll see if for some of you, it might not be installed, but it'll be the option to install it. And for some of you, you may already have installed it, depending on how you did that Anaconda install at first, right? So it might be all set to go, or it might just be a short little process, and that'll be part of what we do here tonight. All right. So first focus is how we're going to apply no code coding tools to this type of problem in particular. Um, Here's some tools that are actually very popular for working with no code in a data environments where you're just dealing with data. The one that we're going to use is the one that's near the bottom there called the Orange Data Mining Tool, very popular one. It is a standalone piece of software that operates with Python at its core, right? So Python is like the engine that drives it, but it is a drag and drop tool. And many of these tools are like that, where you have kind of like conceptual pieces, almost like flowchart tools almost that you drag into your environments, and then you connect data to them, and then you get a flow going, and it kind of analyzes the stuff for you. A bunch of the tools here, some of them are ones that you will encounter either professionally as you're working or through other instruction in this program. We will, in this program, at the very least, expose you to the Orange Data Mining, R Studio. We have a whole standalone class in the R programming language, by the way. And then the Microsoft Azure Machine Learning Studio is a big one as well. I don't want to ignore the others, but the other ones tend to be a little bit different from their delivery aspects. The Microsoft Azure Machine Learning is one of those, really, because you have to have an account on their system, and then they give you credits as a student to use their tools, but it's really easy to burn through the credits. So we're very, very cautious about telling you when to go into that platform. Same is true with some of the other platforms. There are some of these that are kind of inexpensive to operate, but most of them do have a cost. And some of them are pretty inaccessible for regular humans, like the IBM Watson Studio only works on IBM platforms. Ironically, we do have one of those platforms here on campus, but the Watson Studio is hyper expensive. So it's, we've been trying to negotiate with them to see if we can get it, but that looks like it's coming down the road. I guess we need a newer version of their operating system before we can run it. So there's like, and the new operating system needs new hardware, and their hardware is not cheap. And then when you start combining all those costs, we get like way up into the six-figure range for an investment, just for a little tool that we can play with. So unlikely, but these are some of the big names in the area. And as you kind of dig into particularly machine learning projects, you'll be exposed to many of these tools. Conceptually, at least, they say that there's no programming knowledge needed, and I would contest that a little bit. I think we heard that from our advisory too, where it's like it's kind of helpful if you do know code, right? Like you can use these tools, but it helps if you kind of know what's going on, right? So that's one of the reasons why you get that thing. Most of the tools are click and drag, so they're graphical in nature. Many of them operate inside of a browser, but as we mentioned, some of them are standalone software products too that you have to download and install. They say there's a shorter learning curve that way, and that's true because you kind of ignore all the mechanics of like, how it all operates, and you just work with the higher level concepts. So, I mean, yeah, you can build an AI model pretty much right away. Um, and most of the times, we're using these types of drag and drop tools to create models really quickly to see how it might work out, right? And then if it seems promising, then you build it out further or add more parameters to it. But a lot of work is done with these types of tools in this area. Um, okay, so here's some examples of like people applying no code tools um, to kind of accelerate workflow once again. So they talk about Seagate. They're the ones that make like hard drives and stuff. And they use it to automate repetitive manual data tasks. I'm not sure what they are exactly. Schneider Electric uses it to create predictive IoT analytics for predicting which remote equipment needs to be repaired. So, in other words, they monitor devices and they can tell when a device is going to fail before it fails because it sends out warnings apparently, and they predict that, and then they can fix it before it completely breaks. The 160 over 90 uses a no code tool to do research and segment customers so they can do their marketing better. And Transport for London does it for road network management, and it gives the operational team managing the traffic signals a little more insight as to what's going on. And I don't know if you guys ever do this, but if you ever like run a GPS to go somewhere in your car, right? And like I do often when I run my GPS, I will plot a route, but I also add the traffic map over it. So it shows me like with green lines or yellow or red how much traffic are on the roads, where the stop signs are, and stuff like that. And sometimes like where the cops are sitting as well. That's another good reason to use it. But don't you find it interesting, like how um, like Google Maps or whatever map system you use has like real time live traffic data, and you go, oh my god, they're totally right. Yeah, it is really slow here, you know. Um, and how are they gathering all that data and then feeding it back out to you to tell you which way to go? I think it's really kind of an interesting thing. Um, so which one do you think we're going to use today? Well, I think I already told you, right? So we're going to use the Orange data mining tool here. Um, why, some of the reasons there at the bottom. It doesn't take much. You might already have it installed and don't even know it. Otherwise, it's really easy to add if you have the Anaconda distro. It doesn't cost anything. It's open source, which is a good thing. And it's widely supported and documented. And you can use it for so many different things. The concept is that you're doing data mining with it, but you can really do much more than that with it. All right. So we're kind of digging into it right away. So this is just to remind you, this is kind of part of your project. So as you're doing these steps here, the first part is let's make sure that Orange is installed on our computers. Now, I know for a fact when I was playing with this the other day, I did it on my school machine for testing. And so I know I have it there. I'm not really sure that I have it on this machine. So we're going to find out in a minute. Then school told me, oh, by the way, we're going to upgrade your computer. So, I have all this software installed on it. Now they're going to take the machine away and I have to reinstall all the software. So, oh joy. All right. So let's go through these steps here. There's two different steps for doing this. So the one is you can go right to the Orange website, you can download it and run the installer. That's one way to run the software. For anybody that took the Python class with me, which is a lot of you, if not most of you, and I think most of our instructors recommend that you install the Anaconda distribution. So can I just throw this out as a question, just to see what the results are here in the Zoom session? How many of you have the Anaconda distribution as your main Python distribution? And I'm going to think that most of you do. So like, particularly if you have Spider, you probably do. For the rest of you that don't know, we're going to have to get into this aspect that I'm going to have to show you where to get that as well. So let's start. But I'm just going to take a really quick look here at the direct installation method. So just in case you want to do it this way, I'm going to rifle through those slides, but just telling you up front, this is not the way I recommend. I do recommend the Anaconda distribution. All right, so first you'd go to their website, so orangedatamining.com, right to the download page, pick your OS, and it should auto select. You hit the download, um, click install anyway. You just follow the screens, right? Click next, you know, next, I agree, like you have a choice. Uh, select your folder, click the install button, and then you should have Orange up and running. Okay, so that's the one method. The other way to do it is through the Anaconda distro. So here's how you can test to see if you have Anaconda even installed, right? So the first step would be go to your start menu and just type Anaconda. And if you come up with the Anaconda Navigator, that means you already have Anaconda installed. And I'm going to go ahead and launch that to bring it up on screen. And I'm going to let it do its work here. And you see a little tool it's bringing up. We'll just let it do its thing. And I might have to come out of full screen with this. All right, so there's Anaconda, and I'm not going to do any updates to it. But yeah, my Orange is not installed on this machine. But if you have the Anaconda Navigator, you'll have the ability to install from this button. And if you guys are brave enough, you can go ahead and start that process. Now, for anybody that does not have Anaconda already installed on their systems, I'm going to suggest to you that you go to this link, and I'm going to drop that in the chat for everybody. That's where you get Anaconda from. They prefer that you register, but I don't know if you guys are noticing, you can skip that registration and just go here. And then you can go to the installers for whatever your operating system is. When you hit download, it will download the Anaconda Navigator, all the current Python libraries that are considered stable, the Spider IDE, the Idle IDE, and a bunch of other little tools and whatnots. Most importantly, it will also add the Anaconda Navigator to your screen. So once Anaconda is fully installed, then you can get to this screen here and then install Orange. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click this install button. And I'm going to kind of follow their slides here. And so let's go ahead and hit the install. We'll just let it do its thing. It's not very exciting, but and I don't know if it's like bringing up other icons or anything here. I don't think so. One of the problems with doing a slideshow, by the way, is this full screen mode, which sometimes I do not like. So I'm going to just pop out of the full screen mode for a second, just so I can see my icons at the bottom and in the recording. All right, so it's doing its process. We're just assuming that it's doing it. My circle is spinning. This is like watching paint dry, like watching people install software on a video is very exciting. And I'm not sure if you guys might have newer version of these, like in your setup. I know like my Spider is kind of old. And I'm not sure if this version of Orange is kind of old, but I assume it's new enough. So for those of you taking the R class in the summer, you can go ahead and install the R Studio. And yes, that is an emergency alert coming through on my phone. Apparently we have some sort of a silver alert or something like that coming through. Yep. And I feel like, hopefully it's not like a nuclear attack or something. So I feel compelled to look at it at least for a moment. Yeah, it is a silver alert and nowhere around here. So somebody's missing down in Greenfield, Wisconsin. All right, so Orange is still installing, and I'm assuming what's happening in the background here, and this is, highly assumptive of me, but it's going to their website, it's downloading it, and then it's installing and doing the process in the background. It's just not showing us the screens. It's kind of automated. When I did this on my other machine, I think maybe it took a minute or two. This machine might be a little bit more taxed because I am running Zoom screen recording and a bunch of other software all at the same time. And I will just let it sit here for a moment, and hopefully it'll be done soon. And in fact, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pause the record just so people have. All right, so I've been trying to do this install here, and as you guys can see, it's still spinning after a second attempt. So I got a little bit frustrated, by the way, and I'm going to quit the Anaconda installer, and I'm going to do the install of Orange independently. So I've already done the download here from the Orange website, so orangedatamining.com/download. It's in my download folder, and I'm going to go ahead and launch the installer from here. And then I wonder, was that screen in the background the whole time? Because that's why I was saying I was like, wanted to see my icons to see if anything was popping up, and I didn't see anything popping up. This should register inside of Anaconda after I do the install. I don't want desktop shortcuts, but start menu is fine. And notice how it checks to see if Anaconda is already installed. It's already installed, so it'll register itself inside there. Okay, so we're just going to go with its default location here and run the installer. I mean, yeah, see how fast that's going? I mean, oh my God, it's much, much faster. But still, I'm going to watch the detail screen here. This is simply showing decompression happening, I think. It does say this might take a while, so let's see how long it really truly takes. And I realize I'm recording this. This is very boring in the recording. So I'm going to pause the recording if you guys don't. All right. So finally says it completed here, and it took quite a long time. And then I'm going to go ahead and let it start Orange and get it up and running just to make sure it's okay. This should automatically embed itself into the Anaconda distro, by the way. So in other words, Anaconda will recognize that it's there and available. Just judging from the amount of time it's also taking to launch right now, it's a pretty robust application, right? Because nothing's on my screen yet, even though I hit the run button. And I'm just, you can see I've closed a bunch of my windows, but we're still waiting. And so I'm not sure what it's doing in the background right now, but I'm trying to be patient. You can tell I'm kind of losing my patience at the moment. All right, I'm going to go back to the PowerPoint and I'm just going to watch for it to load. Now, one of the things that they also do in the slideshow here, and I'm going to switch my screens here again, um, is they talk about how you could do this if you want to do it from the command prompt. That's kind of a thing too. So some people sometimes install stuff like this from the command prompt. It's not an unusual way to do Python stuff. Um, Sometimes you do it with pip commands, and sometimes you do it with Anaconda commands. You can see this is an Anaconda command, thus the conda prefix in the command line. Shows you what the install screens look like, and we were kind of seeing screens like this uh, in the Windows installer. And at this point, we're kind of hoping that the tool is there. I still haven't seen it launch on my system, so I'm a little concerned, like what's going on in the background. Um, Maybe all that stopping and starting kind of mess things up a little bit. And I'm just going to proceed here um, with the material. So I don't know what's going on if it's launching or not. I might have to take a break and like restart my system or something. I'm just kind of putting it out there as a possibility. But I'm going to move forward with this material. Um, when we start to work with this project scenario here, um, they kind of bring us back to the project lifecycle stuff that they were talking about earlier in the course, which is where we kind of move to next. Um, and so if you guys remember these project steps here that we went through, like these 6 steps in the AI project cycle. So problem scoping, data acquisition, exploration, modeling, evaluation, and then finally deployment. Um, Part of the process, and I would often argue in any project that you undertake, like the first step is understanding actually what you're trying to solve, and quantifying it, and really narrowing it down to something that you can accomplish, basically. And usually when we're scoping out an AI problem, we're usually dropping it into one of 2 categories generally, and that is, are we classifying things or are we doing some sort of a regression problem? Um, all right, so they were going to kind of quiz us here a little bit, and talking about, like, if you have a data set to predict if like a cell is cancerous or not, is that classification or is that regression? That would be classification, right? What about predicting if house prices will go up or down? That's probably regression because it's probably a mathematical correlation. Predicting exam scores for this module at the end of the semester, right? Well, who knows? I think that's regression also. Is it going to rain tomorrow? You think that's classification, or is that regression? Yeah, that's a little bit trickier one because because you're dealing with an either or, so really it's classification. Um, the other thing, as you're trying to go through that first stage, is to look at any issues that arrive ethically from the stuff that you're doing with the project. Is it gonna raise any concerns, right? So that's a possibility always. You do have to acquire your data, and especially for this type of project where it's statistical analysis. Um, you might be provided a data source, or you might have to hunt down the data source, and then you have to start asking questions about the data. Is it the right data? Do you have all the data? Do you need more data? Is the data even applicable to the problem that you're solving? Is it relevant? Um, and how are you acquiring that data? Like, are you just paying for it outright? Are you using a public repository? Are you gathering it mechanically somehow? Um, there are people that gather data, by the way, by scraping the web. That's a thing that a lot of people do. So they use public facing websites and they run these really fancy Python scripts that go to your URL, extract the data, filter it out, um, and then they use the data to process stuff. Is that ethical? And there's concern about that, because if you're the person generating the data, you can say, well, maybe not, maybe it's not ethical. What if you're using, like I did a little bit earlier, where I had a data set that I found, and then we use um, a Gen AI engine to turn it into Python code, right? Okay, well, I know that the data that I grabbed was in a public repository. They wanted people to take it, right? And that's where most of the news agencies got their data from too. So that's not the issue. Converting it to a Python format, I don't think that's an issue either. But those are the kind of weird questions you start to ask. Once you have the data, then you have to start kind of looking at it and see what's in it, right? And this is a normal process, I think, like whenever you're writing code or you're feeding something into Excel or Tableau or Power BI or whatever engine, you got to look at the data, see what it's made of. Is it good data? Is it well structured? Is there missing data? Do you have to clean it? Do you have to process it? Um, this next stage, the modeling part, is kind of where we will start focusing, because now we have to start creating the models that actually drive the output. And notice once again, we ask the classification or regression question, right? Are we classifying, or are we doing like more straight up math in the process of it? There's different types of um, modeling that we do. And depending on the different types of modeling, there's different libraries and tools that we use to make the work happen, right? And they have a little bit of a flow chart here to kind of show you that we kind of break down into these four larger categories. Classification and regression are kind of right up at the top, because most things fall into that. But we also have clustering and dimensionality reduction that we can do to data sets, and those require different types of tools. Notice that they kind of break down which approaches you use that are appropriate. And this, by the way, comes from the scikit website that kind of breaks down your problems into these categories, and then asks a series of questions via this flowchart with yes, no answers, right? So like, do you have more than 50 data points? Right? If you do, then you can decide, is the data labeled or not, right? Does it have a category, et cetera? And then you answer the questions, then it pushes you into the different areas to make the right model decision. There is a link to this information, right? So you can, if you want to figure out which is the right approach, you can actually go right to this graphic and follow the information on it to make your decision. And I'm going to zoom in as much as I can without losing the detail. But once again, do you have 50 samples of data or more? Are you trying to predict a category? Is your data labeled? Well, then you go into classification. If it's not data labeled, then you go into clustering, right? And you use different tools once again. Once you have models that you've selected that you're going to use, and this is part of the modeling process, I think models are, once again, either mathematical or classification. And how well do those models fit your data, and are they really working correctly, right? And you have to evaluate that. And do you think your models are accurate, or do they need more detail, or are you missing something, or is your approach wrong? Are you answering the questions incorrectly? Because you might need to change it up or add to it to make it more viable. And then ultimately we get to the last stage of the cycle is deployment, which means putting it out there. And then what is your delivery mechanism? Are you pushing it out as an app? Are you putting it on a website? Are you throwing it on a server somewhere where people can access it? Um, but often it still comes through a phone or a computer, either way, often through a web browser. At this point, it's asking us to navigate around the orange data mining, and I think that I might have to either pause the recording or stop the recording to try to launch that tool. And I might have to go through the process. I'm just kind of fair warning you guys. If I have to reboot to get it to run, you guys will lose me in the session here, and then you'll have to rejoin. But that would be a last ditch effort. But I am going to try to see if I can get it to launch right now. So let's do that. I'm going to try to do it while the recording is still running. I did try to launch it before, and the icon never came up. So this time, I'm not going to launch through Anaconda. I'm going to launch it directly from my start menu. And let's see if it comes up running. And I don't see it loading. And so I think I might have to um, force it to run. Okay, I'm going to try Anaconda. And so you guys are watching my troubleshooting process here. We'll launch Anaconda again. The other thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my task manager and see if there was a call to run the program and it just isn't launching. Yeah, and it's not finding orange in there. And then I'm looking here. This is kind of strange to be doing it this way, but when a program's not running, there's a reason for it. Okay, so here it still shows as it needs to install. So folks, what I'm going to do is I am going to end up rebooting my system here to see what's up. So I'm going to stop the recording. So we're going to have to split this recording, unfortunately, into two segments. So this first part stops here, and then I will do a very quick reboot.